All right, welcome, welcome. So glad you came to join us. If you're new here, I love seeing everybody's face. I say this every week, and it gets truer every week. Friday is my favorite day, not because it's Friday only, but because I get to meet with people that are really engaged in enhancing their role and their participation in the firm. And that really gets me going of why I do what I do. If you are new here, I'm so glad you came to join us. I hope you find this to be a really good use of your time. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos on legal technology talk. We did put a notes page in the chat, so if you want to go grab that and take notes as we go, that is in the chat for you. And I'm going to turn it over to Beth, and off we go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So today we're going to talk about, sorry, I'm trying to get uh, myself organized because everything just rearranged itself on my screen. Um, who we're going to talk about moving from doer to architect and transitioning from task management to process ownership. So we usually look at things in these meetings as at a higher level, and we talk about process improvement and the biggest big impact projects and things for that. Today, I want to switch that up a little bit, and we're looking at your individual experience and how it fits in the firm. And I want to give you tools to improve your day-to-day experience as a team member and empower you to be more than a task list. How many of you have a task that you do every week where you think there has to be a better way, but you're too busy doing it to fix it? So, in a law firm, we're often rewarded for the volume of work we do, the tasks, not necessarily the efficiency of work, which is the process. And task management is completing the checklist. I filed the motion. It's reactive to the prompts you're given. It's the hamster wheel in the office, really. Process ownership is improving the checklist. Create a template so filing the motion takes half the time next week. That's proactive and stating this is my process and I'm going to improve it so it's not as difficult next time. We can't scale by working harder. To grow our firms and careers, we need everyone to stop acting like renters of our workflows and processes and tasks and start acting like the owners of them. So, what does that mean and why does it even matter? The renter mindset is printers always jam. Someone should fix that. That's not my on my task list. That's not my job. I have a task to print something, so I'll unjam it for the third time today and complete my task. That's a renter's mindset. And sometimes you need to do that, granted. Um, but if you're doing it for the third time, then you need something more. They react to issues and stay in the cycle of quick fixes to just accomplish the task list. So the owner, it's like the printer jams every time we print labels. I'm going to research and see if we order better labels or change the default tray settings if that fixes it. They fix the source of the friction. It isn't just a task to do it, it's a fix, so the task doesn't need to be done anymore. But why should you care? You get paid the same for the time you're there, even if you're doing grunt work or every day or improving things. Doesn't matter, your paycheck's the same. But when you embrace ownership, you can change your career trajectory. Leadership values individuals who problem solve and contribute to process improvements. So, if nothing else, you build some great points for your resume. And that's why it's important to you. And it also helps protect your sanity and improve your productivity. It's much easier to handle your workload when it's productive and not just a list of tasks that need to be completed. Can reduce the last minute scrambles and fire drills that happen in a firm. Those last minute scrambles should be only for the rare times that things are out of the ordinary, not every day. So how do we find the stuff to work on? Well, if there's something that you have a task for that is done 3 times in the same manner, then it should be a documented process and something that you can take ownership and improve. The same goes for things that you're frustrated with and have frustrated you on more than one occasion. And I'll give a personal example here of we were in the law firm every time we had a signing meeting. When I first started there, after I started the drafting, every time we had a sign meeting, the client would be walking in the door and we would be back in the office printing out the documents and tagging them and doing all the stuff. And it was like all hands on deck to get these ready to go in there. It was insane. And it happened every single time. Um, until we're like that this has to stop. Like I'm drafting the documents. The issue was the attorney in this case was not doing her stuff to make sure they were ready to print until 5 minutes before the meeting. And so by simply taking ownership of that process and saying, hey, this is my job. Now I need to hold you accountable for this. And we move that back so it would be ready the day before. Did that mean that there weren't times where there was that before the meeting? Yeah, there still was. But it made it easier and it made it a lot more, excuse me, a lot more uh, a process. And then we could say, this is out of the process. This isn't just this crazy preparing for a meeting that happens all the time. And that's taking ownership of it. So some of the areas to look at are intake, of course, and anytime you're entering data into more than one area. So I can give you a real life example of this. A firm using paper for forms for the personal information from the client and drafting meeting. And we did this for a long time. This meant when it came time to draft, all that information needed to be entered in the drafting software. That would take about an hour, sometimes more, depending on the plan complexity. So by adding DecisionVault for $165 a month, using it for the information form and the design sheet, cost them about $1,000 to set it up, $65 a month to use it, and saved them about 70% of data entry time in drafting. This allowed the paralegal to focus on improving other areas after this improvement. Saving about 10 hours a week translated to a return on investment in about 3 months and a continuing return for the future. All it took was a paralegal taking ownership of her process and says there has to be a better way to do this. Some other areas are, why do we hunt for the same objections template every case? Why are we emailing back and forth 5 times to set an appointment? This is a good example. And I've seen a firm that was sending out 4 optional dates for client meetings, and they picked one that worked manually. The client service coordinator spent hours every day organizing this, adding possible appointments to the calendar, then removing them after scheduling. Her task list was pages long every day with this. A simple switch to allow the client, and also referral sources, to schedule the meeting through a form freed up so much time and cleaned up the calendar so quick, in addition to ensuring that the calendar was full and correct at all times. And I will tell you that the holdback on them moving to that and doing that, the pushback, was that now we need to make sure the calendar is correct. Like somebody needs to maintain that calendar and make sure that calendar is correct. But what was happening was the client service coordinator was spending over half of her day keeping the calendar correct anyway, where you could switch that to where she spent, 15 minutes making sure the calendar was correct and up to date. And the rest of her day was freed up because she wasn't creating all of these possible appointments and putting them in a list and sending them and then going and cleaning them out. And it was crazy. But that simple switch made such a big improvement when she took ownership of it and said, this is the way we need to fix this. And then there's hidden process gaps. So if you won the lottery tomorrow, see, I switched from being hit by a bus. If you won the lottery tomorrow, what part of your job would nobody else know how to do? That's a process gap. Owning it means extracting that knowledge from your head into a system. Owning it does not mean holding it hostage and keeping it just for you. Owning it is being able to put it onto paper and put it out there into a system. A lot of times we look at that as job security if no one else can do what I do. Unfortunately, that also means that you can't advance either. You're also limiting other members of the team from moving up as well because you can't go anywhere nobody else can either. Getting these processes into a written process or a program to help you clear them from your brain space allows you to improve them and own that improvement, to be the architect. So then how do we execute this? Well, we define the process steps. What are all the steps of this process? And identify what we need to accomplish this improvement. Do we need a software, hardware, maybe simply a whiteboard? What is going to define this as complete? And when do we say the initial improvement is complete? Remember, it's never actually done. We want to embrace the process evolution. That's where ownership is really important. This is my process, and I'm improving it, so it's much more powerful than this is my job. You also want to get feedback. A process isn't a statue, it is a living thing. So owners will constantly ask, is it still working? That's auditing. Auditing is so important to know that things are not devolving back into chaos. So all of those are very important. So now I have a challenge for you. Challenge to take ownership and improve one thing before the end of the year. It doesn't need to be big. It can be little. We're going to use this as a guide to transform our task list frustrations into processes. They can be little things. Identify one task that causes you frustration. What is that? Analyze that process. Look how it's currently done and identify what about it is so frustrating. What's driving you crazy every day? Create your step-by-step checklist or template that outlines how you perform that task. Document those steps, what's going on. Seek feedback. Talk about it. Bounce ideas off your team members. Particularly important for the team members before and after your task. Get their input, and you may be surprised at what a fresh pair of eyes does to that whole process. And then make the adjustments. Maybe it's as simple as moving where something is on your desk. And yes, that can be big. It can be that small, but that impact is huge. And I'm going to tell you how that is. I have a split keyboard, and I know this is going to drive some of you absolutely crazy. I have a split keyboard. And the reason I have a split keyboard is because I do so much of typing and then mouse. So what is that motion of typing and mouse? Well, I'm right-handed. The mouse goes off the side of my keyboard because the 10 key is over there. So now my arm is all the way over here to use my mouse, and I'm coming back. I got a split keyboard. My mouse is in the middle of my keyboard. So that motion just, the change that made in just doing those little things was huge. Just simply changing the position of things on my desk and splitting my keyboard in half, which I know some of you were like, how on earth can you handle that? That's, if you're typing with both hands anyway, it's not really that different, honestly. But that made a huge difference in just how you're handling things. And then celebrate your win. Celebrate that you owned your process and you improved it. Get it out there. And it can be those simple little things. And then don't stop. You started the momentum, so keep that moving. And I want to leave you with extra bonuses that you can feel that if you feel you can't take ownership of things and no one in your firm listens, let's talk about your pitch. And no, we're not singing. We're pitching ideas. Instead of saying the intake software sucks, say, I've noticed we waste 2 hours a week on manual entry. I've mapped out a workflow using whatever that automates it, or that improves it, or that cuts this much time out. Can I pilot this on the next two cases? Sometimes it's just a different approach that allows you to take ownership and make the improvement. And as always, we're here to bounce those ideas off of and explore options for you as well. But really moving from that, I have a task list, I'm going through and checking off my task list, this is my everyday, to I own this process and I am the architect of it and I am going to improve it and make it better, really is. And this isn't a whole firm thing. This is what each individual can help with in their own little world that they're operating in. John, do you have any feedback on that?
I do. I have a couple things, and most of them are just piggybacking. When Beth was talking um, about improving a process, one of the best examples for the challenge of improving a process, excuse me, and it's something we still see to this day, is fixing tasks that come through as create a task to something. We know it drives everybody nuts, so go fix that. Just make that task pop in, and then you don't ever have to
Yep.
worry about that again. Another one is with the sign meetings. So Beth fixed that right away when she came in to the estate planning law firm we worked at. She fixed that we weren't printing documents right away. But then she took it further. We got a screen in the conference room. Yes, we joined the modern century. And then instead of printing them before, we were having the admin assistant go in and pull up all the documents that were going to be signed on the screen because we didn't have a doc review meeting like a lot of firms do. And they would be reviewed there. And as they were completed, then that person would hit print, Beth or the attorney. And as they were coming out, the admin assistant sat right there. So she would just grab it, put it together, put the tags on. So by the time they were complete, the admin assistant just brought all the documents in and they were ready to sign. You didn't have to go through any more documents. So that allowed last minute changes as well. So even after she fixed the process of printing, not right before a meeting anymore, then it went even further that we could benefit the client by allowing changes that might not be exactly what they wanted to reach their goals. The next one was taking things out of your brain and putting them into a system or process. It's also freeing up you. If you need a vacation, you can actually take a vacation. Um, and I always encourage people to turn off their work when they're on vacation. I know people say, oh, but. Usually that but is, I may need to answer a question. I may need to be available for somebody. But if you take that out of your brain and you put it into the process, you can unplug from work and enjoy your vacation with your family or your friends or whoever you go on vacation or yourself. I love going on solo vacations. Um, so when you die, you are not going to say, I am so thankful I did nothing but think and talk about work. Nobody says that. Um, and then Beth was talking about having her mouse in the middle. So we talk about making process, putting things in place to make things more efficient, more productive. Um, and like she said, with equipment, it doesn't always have to be something written. It can be equipment or technology changes. Because one thing she was doing is she builds these massive automations when we're working with new clients. And I mean, it is scrolling all over the screen to see all these automations. And it was ridiculous. So I was at Costco and I saw a sale on these huge, what are they, 32-inch or something like that, curved monitors. So we got her two of those. Now she can stretch it across both. She's not scrolling around, getting lost where she's at, and it saved her time. So sometimes you can look at the cost benefit of just giving people the tools they need to be productive and efficient, because that may be a big chunk. If they are working on a computer from the year 2000 still, that's not fair to the employee. It's not fair to your colleague. If you're the one doing it, it's not fair to you, because what you're doing takes 10 minutes because the slow computer, a simple investment. Computers are not expensive now.
Right.
You can do that in about 30 seconds. A really good example is we always record every single meeting that we have with clients and we drop it in their portals. And we had somebody doing it who is on a slower internet. So they would do it and it took them hours. Well, now I do it and I have fiber internet. What was taking her hours, I'm doing now in under 2 to 3 minutes, because most of their time was spent downloading those videos. So equipment changes, technology changes are just as important. And just to be aware of that, it's Christmas. If somebody's complaining about their computer, if you're a firm administrator or have some pull, use that pull to update their equipment as well to make their life easier. That's what I had, Beth.
Yep. And if you're the one with a slow computer, bring that to light. Don't be just like, this is just my thing. And I know that I've had discussions with people and they're like, oh, I work all the time on my laptop. Is that efficient for you? Some people, what they're doing in their job, that's perfectly fine. Some people really benefit from two monitors. Um, you know, getting it out there, just simply sometimes having Outlook open on one side and your practice management open on the other side. That really helps to keep you organized in a day. So it can be little things like that that really have a big impact. And I say little things because, yes, it involves a purchase, but the prices of everything around hardware have come down so much that it's just amazing how much they've come down.
Beth, will you address, because you did address how to start the conversation on process changes, things like that. Can you address, if it is a monetary improvement, how to bring that to light in a beneficial way that they can see your perspective as well and actually want to help you with that?
Yeah. So the best way to do that is one, if you are outsourcing work, that is huge. If you're outsourcing work to somebody because there's not bandwidth in the office to do things. And that's not just your own job. It is something for somebody else. For example, if I'm intake and I know that, and I'm going to take this from an intake perspective. If I'm intake and I know someone's drafting, and the paralegal that's doing the drafting and doing all this stuff, like they are overwhelmed. They're here after hours. They're like, it's, they have too much work. Um, I can say I'm going to improve this process. This is going to save me this much time in a week. And I can use some of that time to do some of the data entry that the drafter has. I can't, do some of the specialty stuff that the paralegal's doing, but I can do her data entry. And that then allows them to say, oh, then we can save by not having to, maybe we don't need to hire another paralegal right now. Maybe we can stop paying her overtime for 20 hours a week. You can then monetize that and you can show that where that is. And that is important because really it is about the bottom line. Um, so you can use, that's one example of a way you can use that. If I'm going to free up time here, um, is what can I show that I can do to actually turn that into a dollar value? And then the other part of that is maybe it's not monetary. Maybe it is client satisfaction. There's different benchmarks of improve it. Yeah. Different benchmarks of improvements that you want to do. It's not always about the bottom line. Maybe it is about client satisfaction. Maybe it's about client communication. Maybe it's about any of those things. So adding to those allows you then to put a value on that that may not even be monetary. But yes, you really always do need to show a value and what you're going to do with that value.
Yeah, Beth showed me value when she was opening backups for people
Yeah.
in Excel. These were 500,000 to a million lines on an Excel sheet. And I'm not exaggerating the number. And sometimes it would take 30, 45 minutes for the sheet to open. And we realized that has to stop. That's not best use of time to sit there and lock up your computer for that. So,
Yep.
all right, let's stop the recording and go into open Q&A.